In 793 AD, on the holy island of Lindisfarne, local monks of the local monastery were doing their usual doings. Monks read holy scripture, walk the floors of the monastery, and debated amongst each other. Then, one monk looks up at the island, gazing upon the ocean. The sky of the Northumbria descends upon him. Then, he noticed something in the ocean. Several sailing vessels with foreign looks and tall men sail closer to the monastery. As they land near the island, their features become more jarring. Blond and ginger men aboard symmetrical ships with carved dragons at their front and back. The men can carry swords and axes and are clearly prepared for war. The monk panics. Is an invasion from a nearby state? Are there any pirates? Then, they disembarked and strode straight into the monastery, destroying everything in sight and absolutely plundering the monastery, which was abundant with riches. They subsequently embarked and left, leaving behind a decrepit monastery and news of the attack that spread across Christendom. This was the beginning of the Viking Age. The Vikings, or Varangians as they were known in the East, were a truly fascinating people. They were an advanced group of people who explored, raided, and subdued large parts of the known world during the early Middle Ages. Their presence from the Western Atlantic to Russia had a lasting impact on the European man and the entire world in general. People often like to focus on their more militaristic side, due to their romanticization as noble savages in the Victorian era, but they're a good seamen as well. The longships were easy to make use of due to their symmetrical shape and made them easily maneuverable. Scandinavia, their homeland, was also flanked by the Baltic and North Seas, arguably the two safest seas in the world. Having mastered those seas, Vikings could practically go anywhere, and used great use of this, discovering and exploring new lands. One of the most famous discoveries the Vikings made was around the turn of the 11th century. Icelandic and Greenlandic explorers landed in a mysterious land lying west, a land of forests with enough grapes to produce endless amounts of wine, populated by dark-skinned native inhabitants known as Skyling by the Vikings. Discoveries at Longstone Meadows has revealed that this land, known as Vinland, was in modern-day Newfoundland, Canada. The Vikings were the first known Europeans and Afro-Eurasians to arrive in the New World, preceding the Polynesians and Columbus by 2.5 centuries respectively. In this video, we'll explore the history surrounding the colony, life in it, ultimate downfall, and its legacy. The year was around 950 AD. The Viking Age so far lasted for a century and a half and endured for a formidable force in Europe, being prized mercenaries in the Byzantine Empire and ruling lands such as Normandy. However, their age was beginning to end. Christianity was beginning to arrive in the lands of the north, and many of the rulers of the lands such as Normandy had assimilated into the native culture. Scandinavian holdings in the British Isles were being chipped away by United England, and the Kievan Rus was slowly drifting away from their influence. The future was beginning to feel uncertain for the Vikings. At this point in time, Iceland was under Viking control, being settled swiftly after its discovery in 874 AD. Whether or not the Vikings were the first to arrive in Iceland is controversial, with some proposing that Irish monks were present on the island. Heck, there are even claims that Saint Berdan, an Irish monk, landed in the New World nearly a millennium prior to Christopher Columbus. However, that is a story for another video that I'll probably make sometime in the future, but I digress. Around this time, a boy named Ediricur Thorvaldsson, or Eric the Red, was born in a Norwegian family living in Darien. While he was still in his youth, his father, Thorvald Oddsson, was banished from Norway in 960 AD after being convicted of manslaughter. He fled to Iceland and brought his family to the island as well. Iceland was in many ways like the 13 colonies in America, or the American rivals of the late 19th century. It was settled by outlaws and oppressed peoples, and Eric's family was no exception. Thorvald died in 980 AD, and after a few years, Eric was banished from Iceland for killing a man who was killed as slaves. His conviction of manslaughter was more justified than his father's, but due to the low population of Iceland, any killing, even in self-defense, was prohibited. Eric proceeded as a sound north. Reports of land were coming in, most notably from Gunbjörn Olfsson, who spotted land in 985. It has been rumored that the Vikings may have occasionally hunted in this area by some. Eric disembarked on what he dubbed Grönland, or Greenland, in 986, previously the name sold to attract settlers to the Arctic land. By then, most of the Icelandic territory that was ideal for agriculture had already been claimed, and the promise of green land was enticing to those who were looking for a good farmland. Many Icelanders and Norwegians subsequently immigrated to the island, establishing their Ringa settlements located at the southernmost tip of the island, primarily based around fjords, inlands flanked by high cliffs. Greenland was populated by oppressed peoples, outlaws, and those who wanted a new start, a lot like Iceland. Around this time in history, there were Native Americans present on the island. However, contact with the Vikings was unlikely. The native Inuit population inhabited the far north of the island, while the Vikings were the opposite. The Vikings were able to go on with their life, reproducing and practicing their native beliefs, and establishing their local government. Eric had brought his own family to Greenland, fathering 4 children. Amongst them was a boy named Leif Erikson, better known in English as Leif Erikson, who was born around 970 AD. In 999 AD, he traveled to Norway, where Christianity was beginning to take hold. Olaf the First, king of Norway, ordered Eriksson to bring the faith to Greenland following his conversion. What occurred next has been the subject of debate. However, it appears that Leif was blown off course while attempting to return to Greenland, spotting lands to the west. There had been reports by a man named Bjarni Hofilsson, who had been blown off course to the west in 986 AD. Leif Erikson believed that this was possibly the land he was referring to. He returned to Greenland, purchased Bjarni's vessel, and gathered a crew of about 35 men to voyage to this mysterious new land. Departing from the island of Greenland around the year 1000, his crew arrived in a land he dubbed Helluland, the land of the stone slabs, likely modern-day Baffin Island, the largest island in the Canadian archipelago. They ventured further down south, along the coast of what they called Markland, or Forest Land, likely present-day Labrador, and continued journeying down south until they disembarked on a land they called Vinland, or Wineland, though some have proposed other theories for etymology, such as Meadowland. There, Leif and his crew disembarked in this new mysterious land, becoming the earliest known Europeans to step foot in the Americas. Here, he founded a base called Leifsbruder, or Leifsbooth, where they wintered before embarking on their return to Greenland to inform the others about their discovery. The exact location of Vinland is uncertain. The most popular belief is that it was located at the tip of the Great Northern Peninsula in the Canadian Isle of Newfoundland. This has been backed by the discovery of Viking settlements in the region in the 1960s at Lonsa Meadows. While many agree that this was where Vinland was located, others are not so sure, with some suggesting that they settled further down south to the plant remains and the natural growth of wild grapes in the region, which Vinland was potentially named after. Leif claimed that it was a land of great abundance, with irons, furs, timbers, good hunting, etc., and returned to the area with a few settlers. The area, though rich, was not uncontested, however. At some point, the Vikings encountered a group of people they called Skrælling, the indigenous peoples of other regions. This was the first time that the Europeans and the natives interacted with each other. The area around the Great Northern Peninsula during this time was likely inhabited by the ancestors of the Inuit and Beothuk, as well as the Paleo-Eskimo peoples of the late Jurassic culture. So the native Norsemen traded with the natives, but there was always great tension and there was always a sort of conflict. Similar to the relationship between America and China. The United States and China are close trading partners, but there's great tension brewing between them, and there's always a fear of a major war, but it was not seen in the past 75 years, erupting between the two. The Norse weren't sure if they were natives and were humans or demons impersonated as humans. Conflict broke out when Thorvald, Leif's brother, executed a few natives while they were asleep. Thorvald then proceeded to leave, believing that he killed all the natives he found, but one made us to flee and informed the rest of the natives. They soon returned with a larger army, engaging in combat with the Vikings, killing Thorvald in the process. Thorstein, another brother, attempted to bring Thorvald's body back to Greenland, but strong winds prevented them from arriving. Another story came when the Vikings offered the natives milk and cheese. The natives believed it to be poison. Lactose intolerance is quite common outside of majority white areas, and so this is almost certainly the explanation. At another settlement, conflict broke out after a bull got loose and started the natives. One of the most famous stories from Vinland occurred here. When the men were fleeing, Leif's pregnant sister, Freydis, could not keep up and so grabbed a nearby sword and attacked, forcing the natives to withdraw. In the end, the Vikings could really not have colonized America. The technological gap between the Norsemen and natives was much closer than, say, that of the Spanish and Aztecs. The only major advantage the Vikings had was that they had iron weaponry and armor, while the natives peoples were still stuck in the Stone Age. Even then, the natives just made up for that by utilizing their immense number of advantage over the Vikings. Cavalry tactics have not really been adopted by the Scandinavians yet, and there was no Mongol Empire to introduce gunpowder to Europe from China. Diseases like smallpox had arrived in areas like Europe as far back as the late Roman Empire, but there are too big Vikings and too few connections with the rest of Europe for transmission of contagious disease to the natives to occur, unlike the Europeans of the later second millennium. Archaeological evidence suggests that the settlement at Lanza Meadows was likely abandoned after 15 years, and other settlements were likely abandoned around the same time. Greenlandic and Icelandic seamen seem to have sailed to the region on a regular basis to avoid being rich in forests and brought back North American timber to Greenland and Iceland. The Greenland settlement was continued, being integrated into Norway proper in 1261, and being populated by Norse until around the 15th or 16th centuries. Beginning in the 14th centuries, the mini ice age commenced, which ended the medieval warm period and drastically lowered the global temperatures. This negatively impacted Greenland settlements quite a bit, as the land became increasingly inhospitable. Moreover, the native Paleo-Inuit populations who dwelled on the north were impacted as well, and were ultimately forced to migrate south. In a series of letters dated from the 1440s between Pope Nicholas V and Iceland, mentioned that Greenland had lacked a bishop ever since it was attacked by heathens, likely the natives. The natives likely slowly subdued the Europeans, with the last Europeans either being killed off, genetically assimilated, or fleeing to other places such as Iceland. The last known mention of Greenland of the Greenlandic Norse was written in 1408, documenting a marriage between Thorvald Olafsson and Sigrid Bundsdotter on either the 14th or 16th of September 1408 in the Hasley Church, and was mentioned in a priest at Gador, the seat of the Greenlandic bishops. The married couple subsequently sailed east to Iceland, where Olafsson was born. Around the 16th century, the settlement had been completely abandoned, with no European returning until 1721. In the end, the Vikings failed in colonizing Vinland. They were heavily outnumbered and always were on the verge of having their colonies dying out. The natives vastly outnumbered them, and relations were too hostile for tranquility. Their settlements were forgotten about until the 1960s, when a Norwegian couple of archaeologists, Harald and Anne Ingstad, rediscovered the North settlements at Landshut Meadows. Despite its failure, the Vikings' attempt to colonize Greenland has captivated the minds of many. European colonization of the New World in later centuries greatly impacted the globe and world history, and so it has been interesting to ponder if that process had commenced half a millennium earlier by the Norse. I myself have always pondered this question, and this will be the subject of the next video. What if the Finland colony succeeded? What would the effects be on history, and how will these effects help to shape the world as we know it? Stay tuned for a new video about this coming up tomorrow. Thank you for watching. Consider liking and sharing this video and subscribing if you haven't. If you didn't like the video, feel free to dislike. I don't care. As always, thank you.